Hello, we are live with one of the most exciting Twitter spaces I have had the pleasure of hosting. You can see I am dressed for the occasion, and that is because we have a pretty huge announcement. Agile Coretime is almost live on Polkadot and will be enacted during our call today. So the latest Polkadot upgrade, which is version 1.3, has just rolled out, and it is packed with some pretty exciting features, I think, for the Polkadot ecosystem. We are talking things like super low stablecoin fees on Asset Hub, making Polkadot one of the cheapest blockchains for transferring USDC and USDT, plus lots of other small quality of life changes, for example, like instant bounty payouts and much, much more. I kind of think like one of the real major advancements of Polkadot is like the upgradability of the chain, which can bring new features and functions and tweaks and to really kind of improve the network and iterate on the design over time. Something that Polkadot has really been leading in for many years. And Polkadot is actually able to do this without forking the chain, which has always been one of the real strong suits of Polkadot. And I think this kind of really shows with the rollout of Agile Coretime today. Wouldn't have been possible without this technology that has been preconceived a long time ago by Gav and many others. So let's get into Coretime. I will be your host. My name is Berto. I have with me Donnell and Rob from Parity Technologies, two of the masterminds behind Agile Coretime, and also Sergio. How do you want me to pronounce your name? Sergey. Okay, perfect. Who has been leading the development of the Region X secondary market, which we'll chat more a little about soon. If you do have any questions, please leave them in your platform of choice. We're live on YouTube, I believe, LinkedIn, Twitter, or X, and some other spots as well. So leave your comment, suggestion, whatever you like, and we will be able to see it. We're using some interesting streaming technology. And also, if you are watching this live, it would be really great if you could interact with the post. If you're on Twitter, please like it, retweet it, bookmark it. If you're on LinkedIn, press like. YouTube, share, subscribe, hit the bell, all that kind of stuff. So let us get into Agile Coretime and chat a little bit why it's the next step towards Polkadot 2.0. I wanted to kind of start with a bit of a high-level description and overview, and then kind of get into a little bit more detail. So Donnell, maybe you could talk us through a little bit around the like high-level roadmap of Polkadot and where you kind of see it, and then also kind of like why Agile Coretime is like a major step in this kind of like 2.0 development.
Yeah, I can do. So I'm Donal. Been working with Parity here especially on Coretime for the last year. So the high-level roadmap, I guess like Polkadot 1.0 had quite an opinionated take on how people should build for it. So this is with the leases and slots and auctions, where if you wanted to build on Polkadot, you made a parachain. Your parachain would have blocks every 12 seconds, and there was no flexibility in that. So it was every 12 seconds you made a block and it was validated. And the leases were of kind of a length of 2 years. You could theoretically bid on smaller leases than that, but in reality, 2 years was what we saw. So that was great, but only for people who built chains like that. And so it presented quite a big barrier to entry for people who had lower requirements. So you needed to have economy of scale and quite high backing from the community to be able to secure enough funds in a crowd loan for your auction. And then you also needed to be able to have that scale to use your full availability on your core. And so this is like the next iteration of the chain, where we are trying to, we are making it more straightforward to build on, lower barrier to entry on multiple fronts, which we can cover in a bit more detail in a few minutes. But also with the acquisition of Coretime, where previously it was like an auction where you get it for 2 years. Now with the Agile Coretime model, we can provide this flexibility for people who have differing requirements, and we can cater to kind of all of the different requirements. Between bulk core time and on demand, you can have either very, very small amounts or the same kind of old way for people who do need the scale, where you can have a core making blocks every, let's call it n seconds for now, we'll come to that in a second, forever. You can keep renewing at your fixed renewal or your slightly increasing renewal. And so trying to cater for both of those, where we still want to provide that stability, the price predictability, but also the flexibility, getting all of those things to work together. And then this in combination with the other parts of Polkadot 2.0, async backing and elastic scaling. With async backing, we can have shorter block times. So we can be creating blocks. You can have blocks every 6 seconds, every 2 seconds. Like, with, the sky's the limit, but you sacrifice other things when you shorten your block time. Everything's a trade-off. And then with elastic scaling, people who have more require more than we previously could have offered with a block every 12 seconds for 2 years. Now you can have multiple cores. So it's like having, in the previous scheme, being able to work on multiple leases. And then now with async backing, you can have blocks being pumped to multiple cores with elastic scaling. So they all kind of go hand in hand to create this bigger, better system, which is more flexible.
Nice, thank you. That is an awesome summary. Let's get into some of that in a little bit more detail, I think. Maybe Robert, you could tell us a little bit more around like what kind of core time is, what is the TLDR of core time? Like, how would you kind of explain it to someone that was maybe not super familiar with crypto?
Okay. Yeah. So to understand core time, I think we need to understand what the core is. So what is a core? So Polkadot, in comparison to traditional blockchains like Bitcoin or Ethereum, is multi-sharded. So it's not only securing one chain, one fixed chain, it's securing many chains. And it's even better than that. These chains are not even fixed. It's like completely permissionless. Polkadot doesn't even care what chains it's actually secured. So what does this leave us with? Basically, we have a resource of securing a chain, and we need to give it a name. So that's what a core is. A core is the resource for securing a single chain. And core time, and how does this work? Obviously, by relay chain validators, validating the blocks, fetching the blocks, and making sure they're sound. So you're occupying time on a validator, on multiple validators. And so this is why it's called core time. You have a core, and you occupy the resource of that core for a particular time. In the end, it's all about time, but we'll get to that a bit more later.
Nice. Okay. And in this instance, like in the second paragraph, I'm looking here, it says like core time is simply a measure of time a task can spend on a core. Like, could you maybe just elaborate a little bit more on like what a task is in this instance?
Yes. So I undersold Polkadot even a bit before when I said it's permissionless and we can secure all kinds of blockchains. I lied. Polkadot doesn't care if it's really blockchains. It's just some state transition which has to be valid. Whether it forms a change or something else, Polkadot doesn't really care. So that's why we call it a task in core time and not a chain, because it could be something else.
Nice. Okay, thank you. And so maybe then let's chat a little bit around like Polkadot 1.0. I kind of think like most people here, if you're watching this live, should be relatively familiar with this. This is kind of the base and foundation of Polkadot, from very early on. But it would be kind of good to discuss this just like slightly. Sergio, I'd be interested to kind of hear like from your side, like what some of the limitations were with this kind of like Polkadot 1.0 process, and like what maybe like difficulties people might have had in the past.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in essence, this previous model had some limitations. It was a pretty strict model. It required teams that want to deploy on Polkadot to essentially reserve a core for a very long time. So essentially like up to 2 years. And this is something that's really inflexible, and this is something that is fixed with Agile Coretime, because like this period of 2 years is quite long, especially in this space. So it does not allow maybe some smaller experimental projects to actually get core time. Also, essentially the entire process for getting core time was quite different. It was somewhat of a competition. There were like these slot auctions where teams were competing to actually get a single core. And this is something that is really improved with the Agile Coretime model. It improves like this accessibility. It makes it much more easier for teams to get a core for a shorter period of time. So like the barrier to entry is much smaller. It allows smaller projects, newer projects, more experimental projects to actually try and build something on Polkadot and deploy it and see if it is something of use, and essentially start from there. Also, this previous model, even though in this model teams were reserving core time for a really long period of time, it is still it was still not a predictable model. With Agile Coretime, with Renewals, teams can know ahead of time like how much they would be paying for core time if they kept renewing it. So because there is like this renewal cap, and based on that, teams can essentially predict how much they will have to spend on core time if they wish to continue with their project on Polkadot. So I think like these are some of the main differences when it comes to comparing Agile Coretime to the previous model.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it kind of sounds like if a new team wanted to join or wanted to kind of get involved, there could have been a high barrier to entry, and like some of the stuff that you both have touched on before is like you need to potentially win an auction or to get a lease period, and it's kind of like who has the most money or the best luck potentially kind of gets a slot, which is I think not really in the like whole permissionless style nature that we really want the chain to operate on. So cool, thank you for that. I think maybe then let's jump over to 2.0 and kind of Agile Coretime specifically and talk a little bit more about this. Like Sergey, I'd be interested to hear as well, like, we kind of discussed some of the improvements and kind of like lowering barrier to entry. But it would be interested if you could kind of tell us like how Coretime actually makes it easier for teams to launch. Obviously, there's still like a registration process, but maybe even kind of talk about some of the steps they need to go through using Region X or something like that could be quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, this process consists of a few steps. Like a team would have to reserve per ID, register the code, but essentially for the project to be deployed on Polkadot, they need to reserve the core time. And with Agile Coretime, given that these sales are made much more frequently every month, it is essentially possible for teams to reserve core time, buy core time in the current sale and already start using it in the next one. Or also, given that how this new model is implemented, it's also possible to not even have to wait for the next sale, but also get core time in the current sale from maybe some secondary marketplaces, because essentially these core time regions, this asset that grants ownership over a core or a specific period of time, can be traded, can be transferred. And this is why maybe some projects can even start have their project deployed on Polkadot even in the current month without having to wait and like organize this entire process like they had to do in the slot auction model, where it was really a competition and it was not so easy to get your project secured by Polkadot. So this new model allows this in a much more easier way.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good point too. I think something that we didn't touch on earlier is like with Polkadot 1.0, like up until today, with this lease period, like you had to obviously like win the lease and win the auction. But then there was actually also quite a long wait time depending on how it was scheduled to actually go live, right? So I think one of the other major improvements of Coretime is that like a team can come in, purchase a core and kind of get started like essentially on the same day without having to wait for like weeks or potentially months. So I think that is quite exciting. Janelle, maybe chat to kind of like expand on that a little bit more. So with Coretime, like people are not going to, or builders or projects are not going to be locked into these like 2-year lease periods. You kind of mentioned at the start of the call there were kind of two options, like bulk and on demand. And it would be interested to kind of hear a little bit more around like how people like decide on which one, or like what this kind of works, or like how it kind of works, and maybe like how this renewal process works as well.
Yeah, so on demand and bulk, and you can even separate, you can subdivide bulk further into bulk as is sold by the system, and then bulk as it can be split in 2 different ways. Don't want to go into too much detail, but like yeah, so the kind of the 2 extremes, and then the bit in the middle where you can sort of roll your own. I would say that choosing bulk would be for teams who have a known recurring need for block space. Say that, say you've got really high throughput, this is the easiest one. You're going to need a block every 6 seconds or every 2 seconds or whatever it is you want to have. That's clearly a bulk core time. You're going to be buying from the system and you're going to be renewing. That's a kind of a no-brainer. And then on the very other end of the spectrum, where you have a requirement for validation, but you don't know when or how frequently, that's a clear use case for on-demand, where you can just wait until you have enough transactions and then buy an on-demand block, and then a few blocks later, you get your block and it's validated and done, and you're only spending exactly what you need. Think that
just to interrupt, like when you say bulk, like is this like a 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Because we're going from like 2 years like down to
so 28 days is the figure that we landed on as a DAO. And the reason why it was recommended at 28 days and then subsequently voted in was that it kind of seemed like a good in-between stage, where if you do want to have regular block space, a month is a pretty good chunk of time to know upfront. It means that it's not going to be a huge barrier to entry, but you're also not going to have to keep renewing. If it was a week, you would need to renew every single week. And since it's a month, you need to renew every month. But there are things like auto renewal coming up, and you could always have a bot or whatever it is. But it's an active participation thing. Every single time your core is up, you need to renew. And if that happens every month, every week, every year, every 2 years, we decided 28 days seemed like a good starting point. And if teams in the ecosystem decide that that's too long or too short, then we can change that, or we can propose new kind of variations. But
could be changed by governance in the future.
Exactly, yeah. So that's just configurable. And so anybody can propose new timings for it.
Okay, nice. That makes sense. Like Rob, thinking about these kind of 2 different models where there are, like bulk on one side and kind of on demand on the other side. Could you maybe think or chat about some use cases that make sense for these kind of 2 different models?
Sure. So for on demand, let's say like the classic use case for on demand is like early startup. You don't have enough funds and you don't want to afford, and also don't have the use actually for like a block every 6 seconds, right? So because you barely have any users yet, you're just starting out. So it would be kind of wasteful to order like a full core. Then you have secondary markets, so you could split it up and only get a core like once every minute or whatever. But then at the same time, you're starting up and you don't have many users, but you might have users. So if you have an interactive application and you're only producing a block like once every minute, you might have quite a bad user experience. And what on-demand gives you is, well, you could do things. Okay, I have my first user, he submitted a transaction, let's produce a block right now. So even though you're just starting out, you don't have funds to get like super amazing block times, you can still have a very good user experience from the get-go. So that's one vision we have for on-demand, I would say. And the nice thing is that it's so quickly. You want a core now, and assuming obviously it's permissionless. So if for some reason we had millions of requests for on-demand cost, then obviously there would be some delay. But assuming there's not too much, it's pretty much instantaneous. So you can really provide a good user experience even if you don't have block production on a regular basis.
So just to recap, like as a builder, if I want to build, a demo application or something like this, I can basically have transactions like almost queued up already, and then get a block created and validated almost instantly. Sounds like that is relatively new in the kind of blockchain world. I'm not sure if there's any other chains that I can think of that are doing that, right?
I don't know any either, no.
Okay, interesting. Cool, okay. I think it might be interesting to kind of dive into this like on-demand core time a little bit more if it's, kind of given that. There are kind of a few use cases that we have started to discuss, but would love to kind of chat a little bit more about. That is a good point as well. If you do have any questions or you would like to ask anyone here other than me any technical question, please send them through chat, and we have YouTube and Twitter and a bunch of other things. So yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to kind of chat about like temporary parachains. I think it could be kind of like an interesting thing to discuss. I believe even Sean Chabrizi like posted something on the Polkadot forum about like different kind of options for temporary parachains. I wonder if anyone has a comment or would be interested to discuss that.
I mean, I can talk about it a bit. So I mean, I think it's pretty interesting because like up until now, there wasn't really a possibility to make like this temporary parachains, like more experimental, testing out stuff. And I think this is something that's interesting with on-demand, with Agile Coretime as well, is that it provides teams more options to choose from. So it actually makes it possible to make something that's more of experimental, ephemeral. So it does allow for more experimentation, which was not possible in the previous model. I think we are yet to see like some new experiments, some new teams maybe trying out to deploy something on Polka to see how it works, to familiarize themselves with it. And I think it's a nice way to do so because it's pretty easy to set up. It's much simpler than what we previously had. I'm not sure if others maybe have some concrete ideas or in mind, if so.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and like this is just more of this flexibility that we were kind of talking about earlier, that we can have this flexibility in even like the type of chain that people build or how long it lasts for. And the opposite of an ephemeral chain is if a chain which in the previous model, if a chain got a lease for 2 years and then the project didn't manage to secure the lease after that, what does somebody do who was a user of that chain if they want to make a transaction? They've got something, say they have funds trapped on that chain. Like true unstoppability means that any single user should be able to afford to pay for one on-demand block or one on-demand block worth of core for any given parachain to get their transaction submitted, to be able to do whatever they need to do. So you can imagine many scenarios where that would be useful.
Interesting. So it could also be used as like a recovery mechanism or something like that, right? Like say if a chain does go down and there's for some reason, like you mentioned, people like actually individual users could revitalize that chain to kick off a transaction. Super interesting. Okay. Yeah, I don't know, like Donnell, would be interesting to kind of hear as well, like that this kind of seems like this on-demand core time seems to kind of lend itself well to like projects or teams that are just kind of starting off. And we've spoken a lot about kind of like experimentation and tinkering. Would be interesting to think if you could, like if there are any other use cases or projects or like these types of projects that maybe could like utilize this.
Sorry to swerve the question, but we just enacted.
Oh,
So yeah, Polkadot.
1 minute ago. Okay, nice. Very cool. So that is confirming that Agile Coretime is live and ready to use on Polkadot.
Yeah, so we just entered the interlude period. So 1 week from now, people can start buying cores in the open market. 5 cores. Yeah, pretty exciting times.
Very nice. Maybe we can pivot quickly to that. Could you maybe tell us a little bit around how like this kind of pricing mechanism and how like the purchasing mechanism and how this all kind of works? I feel like you had a strong hand in building it and kind of proposing it.
Yeah, so the pricing mechanism, the new pricing mechanism is actually Rob's that he proposed. It's an iteration on the prior mechanism, which is focused more on the price. And I'm seeing lots of celebration in the chat. Yeah, we should have had champagne. Got a bottle of whiskey in the kitchen here. I can go and grab. Where was I? Just lost my train of thought.
I think it would be interesting to kind of hear like Sam at Builder, right? And I want to get started with Coretime today. It's now live. Like, what are the kind of different periods that I would need to know and like how Coretime works and like how I would interact with it?
Yeah, so we just entered this bootstrapping phase where we've now scheduled the leases for the next sale, and we've started the process of the sales starting. So we've got this interlude period where in a normal sale, this would be where people could renew. But because we've just started this interlude period, nobody needs to renew. The first renewals will happen after the next period. So there's a 7-day interlude now, and then we hit the lead-in period, which is the falling price. I don't know which way around my screen actually is for people, but I'm seeing it this way. So we get this drop from 1,000 DOT to 100 DOT over 7 days, and then another drop from 100 DOT to 10 DOT over 7 days. So we have these two gradients, a sort of approximation to an exponential with a bounded approximation. And then after that point, we have 7 days of fixed price, which is sort of like the market settling phase, where if the price is seen as being too low, so this 100 DOT target price that we have, if that's too low, then people will buy it at the start of the lead-in or any time through the lead-in. And then if it's too high, then the cores won't have sold out by the time it hits 100 DOT, and below that people can still buy. And if the cores don't sell out, then there's still this time of 7 days where people can buy for this guaranteed price of 10 DOT if there's a core left. So that's kind of like how people can get involved. Is just buy a core if you think it's worth it. And if you know your price,
especially if you want to use it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
don't do Usama where somebody just bought them and didn't use them. It's the classic first.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so that sounds pretty interesting. So like to recap, there's like a lead-in period for when renewals happen. The interlude period for when renewals happen, and then there's a lead-in period for price discovery, which starts at 1,000 DOT, relatively high, but trends down over a period of time and to kind of settle at a fixed price. So yeah, that's quite interesting. So each month we have this kind of price discovery mechanism of like how much people are wanting to pay for a core, and then it settles at a relatively low price where if they're not already sold out, then you can get them for relatively cheaply. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And if the blockspace Baron, yeah, if we then go to the next sale, it uses the sellout price of the prior sale to determine this new target price, and so the window shifts. And so if everybody buys a core at 1,000 DOT, then our initial price was too low, and so the next sale will use that 1,000 DOT as more of a midpoint, and you'll have this range around it.
Oh, interesting. So it's a dynamic price discovery month on month.
Yeah.
You guys are pretty smart, I think. Okay, that sounds pretty interesting. Okay, cool. And so maybe we can talk about renewals. If I wanted, like if I already bought a core last month and then I need to renew it this month, am I having to still kind of do this price discovery, or do I get some sort of like price guarantee? Or
yeah, we have these enshrined renewals where if you secure your core and you abide by some rules, so you can't just use your core in any way, but if you're using it in that sense that I was saying, you're just using bulk core time as you buy it from the system, and not trying to resell it or split it or interlace it. So you're just applying it to your workload. Then you can renew, and you can renew for this capped price of 3% more than what you paid the previous month.
Okay, and does the price always increase, or can it decrease as well?
It can decrease, but only when the market drops in a big way. And so there is like a price premium that you pay, a premium on the price for having this renewal. Otherwise, people could just be squatting on cores and not putting it to good use. Because an aim that we didn't mention before is that we want to maximize the utilization of block space as well as making it a lowering the barrier of entry. And so you want to incentivize good usage of block space for everybody. So you don't want to have somebody who buys low, sits on the core paying, say in some alternate reality, the renewal cap was just the same price they paid the last month. So it's just actual rent control. You'd have people who might snatch a core at a very low price and not really be doing much with it, like using it. Obviously, they have to apply it. They have to assign a workload to it, but the workload might be some, I don't know, chain that isn't really worthwhile in the general sense of things. So there has to be some financial pressure for that to go back into the market.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And Rob, apologies. Sounds like you did most of the price work, so apologies there. I forgot my question.
Yeah. So maybe I can just iterate a bit more on this. So basically, renewals work a bit against, like, we have conflicting requirements. We want to maximize utilization, and so we want to be the free market to be used as much as possible, so that the block space is used efficiently. But at the same time, if you are like really heavy duty blockchain and you cannot afford downtime and you want to have predictability for investors and whatever, you pay some premium to get these guarantees, right? So that's the idea. Yeah.
Okay, nice. And so what happens to like this dot that is being used to buy like Coretime, either on demand or in bulk? Like, where does this dot go? Is it how, like, go back to the treasury, or what kind of happens with it?
It all goes to my account. No, it gets burned.
Okay, gets burnt. I see. So there is some like, well, maybe not a huge amount. There is some kind of like deflationary pressure then on the token. Okay, cool. That's super interesting. Maybe it is a good time to chat about kind of secondary markets. So we have, I think, kind of two main secondary markets in the ecosystem now: Elastic and RegionX. And Sergey here is from RegionX to kind of discuss a little bit more like around it. So it would be interesting to hear, like, what was your kind of thought process, like what kind of inspired you to start RegionX?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially with this Agile Coretime model, even though it does provide this new model, it is really not opinionated. It is leaving a lot of the details to be implemented essentially by community projects. So for example, with the new Agile Coretime model, cores can be partitioned, interlaced, and etc. But there needs to be some way for people to actually maybe be able to sell these Coretime regions that they do not use, or buy them, so that the bulk market is really not the only way to get Coretime. And with RegionX, we are essentially building a platform where it will be possible to buy interlaced cores, partitioned cores from an essentially open market. Also, we are kind of introducing an interesting aspect that we had in the previous model, and that is crowd loans. We are kind of reintroducing that with like this Coretime orders model, where a parachain can set some incentives with their native currency for people to help it essentially procure Coretime. And this way, the parachain is essentially able to indirectly purchase Coretime with its own native currency, which I think is pretty interesting. And this way also the community can be involved in this entire process. So
yeah, super nice. I mean, I think like one of the one of the kind of the best things about like the lease model that we had previously was community involvement and kind of like rallying the community. So that's really interesting. Super excited to kind of see that. Sergey, like what are kind of some of the features, or what are some of the things that people can do inside Region X?
So right now, like this marketplace and the order model, it is developed. It's currently only live on the testnet because like we need to get an audit to be able to proceed to deploy on Polkadot. However, currently with user interface, like people can purchase Coretime from the bulk market, interlace it, partition it, assign it to a specific task. And also like this bulk Coretime can also be pulled into this instantaneous Coretime pool from which people can get the on-demand Coretime, and this way like get rewards for contributing to this pool. So these are like essentially features surrounding like the main system that is offered by the Coretime chain itself.
Nice. Okay. And so as a builder, I can come to Region X and purchase on-demand Coretime and also bulk Coretime?
I mean, ideally on-demand would not be purchased via user interface, but like in some automated way. So we are not supporting on-demand. However, we are supporting bulk Coretime and managing it and assigning. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And so maybe Rob, like if I was a builder and I wanted to purchase on-demand, like what is the best kind of mechanism to do that?
Well, you just send an extrinsic to the reader chain, order core, and you get one. That's what is there right now. We do plan at some point to offer. Sorry, what?
I said one step, easy peasy, order core.
Yeah, pretty much. Like that's how it works. What we do plan at some point to provide some nice ready-to-use integration, which does exactly what I described before, that you can monitor your own transaction pool and then automatically order core, right? So
nice.
These are things yet to be built. Can be by us, can be by teams, whoever. There's one team, Magnet, I think, which built something like it already. But yeah, in a sense, you just send an extrinsic transaction. I want the core, pay for it, and you get it.
Nice. Okay. So Sergey, like thinking about like Region X, like what's kind of next on the roadmap for you? What are you kind of envisaging as the next kind of thing you develop or release?
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, we want to get the audit for these Coretime marketplace model for the like this Coretime orders, and to be able to deploy it on Polkadot for teams to use. But also like another thing that we see as great potential currently in the ecosystem is that with Agile Coretime, with the new bridging technology, we truly see like Polkadot becoming kind of like a go-to platform where like projects can be deployed maybe like from other ecosystems compared to other ecosystems like Ethereum. Like Polkadot provides a really nice way and comparably cheap way to deploy projects. Also, it offers like substrate frameworks for building a parachain, essentially these like roll-ups, and we see a great potential in that. So we also plan to focus more on helping onboarding maybe new teams from other ecosystems who might see these benefits on building of Polkadot and kind of help them in the process. So that's also like something we are planning to do in the future.
Very nice, very nice. Did you see Gav's original talk about Coretime and it like inspired you to go and build this? Yeah, okay. Are you going to be buying the first core?
Could be.
Nice. Cool. Okay. Maybe you have to find Janelle for it, let's see. Cool. Maybe we can do just a quick recap. I'm also aware some people join a little bit late and didn't kind of get to do the whole, go through the whole thing. If you do also have any questions, please feel free to put them into whatever platform of choice you are watching this on. It would be great to hear them or at least view them. Cool. So Janelle, maybe you could take us just as like a quick recap, kind of like through some of the changes from like 1.0 to 2.0. Obviously, this includes async backing, which we didn't really talk about, and elastic scaling, which we didn't really talk about. But even kind of at a high level would be kind of good.
Yeah. I saw in the chat actually somebody asked whether this was the start of the, where is the thing? The start of the next generation of Dot or something like that. Oh yeah, here we go. The beginning of the next phase in Dot's evolution. So I would say no. I think that was async backing that started it. That was released a few months ago. And so async backing, Agile Coretime, elastic scaling, you can think about it as async backing allowing people to produce cores. So previously you would have to, produce blocks, build your block and get it to the relay chain in time. And if you missed that, then it was like, oh no, you need to rebuild your block and aim for the next relay chain block. With async backing, you just build your block and shoot it off, and you can keep doing that and build up essentially a queue, and then they can then be processed by the relay chain. It's like as like a high level of way of thinking about it. And so,
and it also increased throughput, right? Like as a team, if you wanted to have high throughput, then this is something that enabled that.
Yeah, exactly. So because of that, you don't need to, because you're always building on top of the last thing in your queue, the last block in your queue. You don't need to build on the last block in the relay chain that's been already finalized. So if you, so the way that this helps is that you can build it not every 12 seconds or every 6 seconds, but you can just build it as often as you want. And there's a video on Basti's Twitter where he, like well past midnight one night, was just fiddling around and got 500 millisecond block times. So like I was saying earlier, you trade off other aspects of performance, but I mean, getting block times that are that low is pretty cool. So that's async backing. Elastic scaling means that you can not just shoot your blocks at one core, but if you produce your queue of blocks, then they can be then processed by multiple cores. And so you can then increase the number that you're making. So you're not just getting
maybe like a question on that. Like if I am a project or a team and I already have like bulk core time, like I already have my allocation for the 28 days, but I'm starting to see like transaction volumes which are increasing beyond my current capability. It sounds like with elastic scaling, I could potentially like have an additional or 2 additional cores, potentially more, to increase the throughput that I need, right? And even potentially if I wanted to use on demand, I could kind of scale that up and down as kind of demand increased or decreased.
Yeah. So that's the kind of the end game elastic scaling, is where a team will have it where they have maybe like have a base core and they're making a block every 6 seconds, but if they get a spike, then they grab some on demand. And if they have a really big spike, then they'll grab more cores for the next sale or grab a core on the secondary market for right now. So yeah, that's maybe something I mentioned earlier about the in-between phases between bulk and on demand. And this is like,
yeah, very interesting,
additional to the extreme that I said, where people are taking advantage of these 3 different additions to Polkadot to maximize the throughput.
Okay, nice. Let's have a quick look at some of the questions and then we can start to wrap things up. When can we buy Coretime? That is, I believe, now or very soon, after the 7-day
after the 7-day
interlay. Yeah, so 7 days from now. Yeah, very cool. Someone said, are there any projects?
There was also a question. Yes, Mythical Games, the Mythos chain, they are waiting for this for their elastic scaling use case. So basically, they aim to scale up quite a bit in the next months. So they want to have it there when they hit the demand that they can actually scale up to more cores. Yeah. For example, that's one chain I know of. Peak, I think they're also counting on it to be there at some point.
Yeah, nice. Someone asked, is there any kind of guide or documentation on these changes from the parachain side? We probably should also mention that. If I am a current parachain owner or project or a team with a parachain, what kind of things do they need to do in order to migrate to Coretime?
Well, RegionX, and I checked RegionX the last time, has a really good UI where I can see your lease and when it ends. So basically, when it ends, you press the renew button. That's what you need to do.
Okay, nice. But so there's no like runtime upgrade or kind of code changes on the parachain side.
No,
it just kind of
everything
sounds like
continuous.
Migrates and works automatically.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. So I kind of guess that answers the question. Is there any guide or documentation? I think it's not required, but I believe like the Polkadot wiki is generally pretty up to date with kind of how things work and Coretime and migration, this kind of stuff. So if you are interested
There's
in
an entire FAQ.
Yeah, the wiki would be a good place to go. Let's see, anything else interesting?
And
that is it. Oh yeah.
Yeah, maybe regarding renewals, I'm not sure if it's added in this release, but there should also be in the future a way to auto-renew. So essentially, teams do not have to interact every month with the user interface, just ensure that the parachain sovereign account is funded and the renewals will be made on their own.
Okay, that's right. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point too, right? Currently, teams need to manually renew, but soon there will be an auto renew function.
Yeah, that'll come in the next release. It's been audited, and it's in the SDK stable. I think it's just about to come out, or maybe the one that just came out recently. But yeah, definitely the next Coretime release will include that.
Okay, cool, very nice. Cool. Well, I think we've kind of gone through most of the main questions. So to recap, we discussed a little bit around Polkadot and like the high-level roadmap between 1, 2, and 3, including, well, we didn't talk about Jam, but in the future Jam. We kind of looked at where Agile Coretime kind of fits into this Polkadot 2.0 release. We looked at 1.0. We discussed kind of some of the high-level limitations with the original design, and we kind of went through how Coretime is improving on these. We spoke a little bit around like on-demand and bulk, the two different options. We spoke about secondary markets. And so if kind of any of this is interesting and you're kind of joining the tail end of the call, please go back and kind of watch and listen to the rest of the discussion. I also wanted to say kind of big congrats, Janelle and Rob, and huge effort to get this off the ground. I know there's like many people at Parity and you know, in the ecosystem that have kind of worked really hard to ship this. So big thanks and congrats to everyone involved. It's been a pretty big effort. We have a like internal Parity channel for kind of coordination. It's like many people. I don't want to say hundreds of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of messages long. It's been a big team effort. So also to Sergey, like awesome work on RegionX. I think like it looks really beautiful, and I think teams will really enjoy using it. So can't wait to see what you build next. Thanks for joining us on this journey. So if you do have any further questions, please comment on the live stream, even though we're about to end. We will kind of endeavor to answer them post-call, either from myself or I'll CC Donald or Rob or Sergey. But thanks all for joining and listening and watching live. It was awesome to kind of do this as Coretime was actually enacted and rolled out.